The probe had been traveling through space for 6 months when the aliens found it. The small human spacecraft was barely the size of a school bus, powered by simple fusion engines that left bright trails across the dark. It carried no weapons, just cameras and sensors to study the stars. The humans who built it called it Explorer 1, and it was their first attempt at faster-than-light travel. Admiral Zexathera watched the primitive vessel on his ship's main screen. His crystalline body reflected the blue light from the display as he studied the crude human technology. The alien commander stood 8 feet tall, his transparent skin showing the complex energy patterns that flowed through his body like living lightning. He belonged to the Vorthak Empire, one of the most powerful species in the Galactic Confederation. How did they manage it? Asked Commander Veltar, Zexthara's second-in-command. The shorter alien's green scales rippled with confusion. Our scientists predicted they wouldn't discover faster-than-light travel for another 300 years. Zexathera touched a control panel with one of his 4 arms. The massive ship called Cosmic Judgment moved closer to the human probe. Around them, 300 other alien warships held their positions in perfect formation. Each vessel was over 2 miles long and carried weapons that could destroy entire moons. Primitive species sometimes stumble onto technologies they don't understand, Zexathera said. His voice sounded like music mixed with the crash of breaking glass. It's like children playing with fire. Dangerous for everyone involved. The alien fleet had been waiting at the edge of the solar system for this moment. The Galactic Confederation had been watching Earth for centuries, studying the strange species that lived there. Humans were unlike any other intelligent life they had found. Most species developed peace and cooperation before they reached the stars. Humans seemed to prefer fighting each other. The Confederation's xenobiologists had filed detailed reports about human behavior. In just the past century, humans had fought 2 massive wars that killed millions of their own people. They had created weapons powerful enough to destroy their entire planet. They had poisoned their air and water while fighting over resources. Every sign pointed to humans being an aggressive, dangerous species. Send the transmission, Zexathera ordered. All frequencies, all languages they might understand. The message went out across space, traveling from the alien fleet toward the small blue planet that orbited the yellow star. It would take several minutes to reach Earth, but the Admiral was patient. He had delivered ultimatums to dozens of primitive species over his long career. The response was always the same: fear, then submission. On Earth, the message arrived during a meeting of the United Nations Security Council. President Chen of the United Earth Government was discussing trade agreements when alarms began ringing throughout the building. Within minutes, every leader on the planet was listening to the same transmission. "People of Earth," the alien voice said in perfect English, though it sounded strange, like wind blowing through crystal caves. "This is Admiral Zexathera of the Galactic Confederation. Your species has achieved faster-than-light travel, which means you can now spread beyond your solar system. However, our studies show that your species is too dangerous to be allowed freedom among the stars." President Chen felt her heart racing as she listened. Around the table, other world leaders stared at their screens in shock. This was the moment humanity had dreamed of for centuries: first contact with alien life. But it wasn't going the way anyone had hoped. "We offer you a choice," the alien continued. "You may surrender all faster-than-light technology to us immediately. Your species will be relocated to a suitable world where you can develop under our guidance. You will be safe, fed, and cared for, but you will not be allowed to travel between the stars. This is for the protection of all galactic civilization." The transmission paused for a moment, and President Chen could hear her own breathing in the sudden silence. "Your alternative is immediate extinction. We have 300 warships positioned in your outer solar system. Each ship carries enough firepower to crack your planet's surface. You have exactly 72 hours to make your decision. Transmit your answer on this frequency when you are ready." The message ended, leaving the Security Council chamber in complete silence. President Chen looked around the table at the pale faces of her colleagues. General Morrison, the military advisor, was already reaching for his phone to contact Earth's defense forces. Dr. Sarah Voss, the scientist who had cracked the theory behind faster-than-light travel, sat quietly in the corner, her expression unreadable. "Options?" President Chen asked, though her voice came out as barely a whisper. "We could try to negotiate," suggested Chancellor Weber from the European Federation. "Maybe they would accept some kind of compromise." "With what leverage?" General Morrison shot back. They have 300 warships. We have maybe 50 military spacecraft, and most of those are designed for fighting other humans, not aliens with technology centuries ahead of ours. Dr. Voss finally spoke up from her corner. May I see the technical data they transmitted about their ships? President Chen nodded, and her aide transferred the information to Dr. Voss's tablet. The scientists studied the alien ship specifications for several minutes, while the other leaders argued about diplomatic responses and military options. None of them noticed the small smile that appeared on Dr. Voss's face. Interesting, Dr. Voss said quietly, but something in her tone made everyone stop talking. Meanwhile, on the Cosmic Judgment, Admiral Zexithara was reviewing the intelligence reports about human military capability. The data was not impressive. Humans still used chemical rockets for most of their space travel. Their weapons were based on nuclear fission, a technology the Confederation had abandoned thousands of years ago. Their largest warship was barely 300 meters long. They have a few dozen combat vessels, Commander Veltar reported. Primitive fusion drives, simple missile systems. Their most powerful weapon appears to be something called a nuclear warhead with an explosive yield equivalent to about 20 megatons of conventional explosives. Zexthera made a sound. That was the Vorthak equivalent of laughter. 20 megatons? Our point defense systems use antimatter charges more powerful than that. He turned to study the small blue planet on his screen. It's almost sad, really. They've reached for the stars too early. Now they'll pay the price for their ambition. The Admiral had seen this pattern many times before. A young species would develop dangerous technologies without the wisdom to use them safely. Left alone, they would eventually become a threat to established galactic civilization. It was better to stop them early before they could cause real damage. Sir, his communications officer called out. We're receiving multiple transmissions from the human planet. Most appear to be radio signals discussing the ultimatum. Any official response? Not yet, sir. But there's significant military activity throughout their system. Ships are launching from their planet and moon. Zexithera nodded. Panic response. They're probably trying to gather their pathetic fleet for some kind of last stand. He made a gesture of dismissal with one of his arms. Let them. It will make no difference. Back on Earth, President Chen was reading the final draft of humanity's response. Dr. Voss had insisted on writing it personally, and despite the simple words, something about the message made the president feel uneasy. Are you sure about this? President Chen asked. Dr. Voss smiled again, the same mysterious expression she'd worn in the Security Council meeting. Trust me, Madam President. Sometimes the best response to a bully is to show them you're not afraid. President Chen authorized the transmission, and the message went out to the alien fleet. It was short, polite, and completely unexpected. Thank you for your concern about our species' development. We appreciate the offer, but we'll manage our own progress. Please leave our system within the next 24 hours. When Admiral Zexthera received the message, he stared at it for a long moment in disbelief. Then he began to laugh, a sound like breaking crystal that echoed throughout the bridge of his ship. Admiral Zexithara read the human response 3 times before he could believe what he was seeing. The primitives had actually told him to leave their system. They were asking a fleet of 300 warships to go away, as if they were nothing more than unwelcome visitors. They can't be serious, Commander Veltar said, his scales shifting to a deep red color that showed his confusion. Do they not understand what we could do to them? The Admiral studied the tactical display showing the human solar system. Small dots of light marked the positions of human spacecraft, most of them clustered around the 3rd and 4th planets. Earth and Mars both showed heavy activity, with dozens of ships moving between them. Perhaps they need a demonstration, Zexithera said slowly, something to help them understand the reality of their situation. He turned to his weapons officer, a tall alien with 6 arms and skin that looked like polished metal. Target the human colony on Mars. Use 1 antimatter torpedo. Complete destruction. The weapons officer's fingers danced across his control panel. Target locked, sir. Mars Colony Beta. Population approximately 2,000 humans. Fire. The torpedo launched from the Cosmic Judgment in complete silence. It streaked through space faster than anything humans had ever built, covering the distance to Mars in less than 30 minutes. The human colonists had no warning, no time to evacuate or defend themselves. One moment, Mars Colony Beta was a thriving research station studying alien geology. The next moment, It was a crater of melted rock and twisted metal. The explosion was visible from Earth through telescopes. News of the attack spread across the planet within hours. President Chen called an emergency session of the Security Council as reports came in about the complete destruction of the colony. 2,000 people had died in an instant, vaporized by alien weapons. "They're trying to scare us into surrendering," General Morrison said, his face pale as he read the casualty reports. "Show us what they can do so we'll give up without a fight." "It's working," Chancellor Weber admitted. "My government is already asking about surrender terms. 2,000 people dead in 30 seconds. How can we fight against that kind of power?" Dr. Voss sat quietly in her chair, reading something on her tablet. She had been strangely calm since the crisis began, as if she knew something the others didn't. When President Chen asked for her opinion, the scientist looked up with those same mysterious eyes. "I think it's time we showed them what we can do," Dr. Voss said simply. Before anyone could ask what she meant, alarms began ringing throughout the building. General Morrison's communication device buzzed with incoming messages from military commanders around the world. His expression changed from confusion to amazement as he read the reports. "Ma'am," he said to President Chen, "every available spacecraft in the solar system is launching. Military vessels, cargo ships, mining platforms, even private yachts. They're all heading toward the outer system." President Chen stared at him. "On whose orders?" "That's just it, ma'am. Nobody gave those orders. The ships are moving on their own." Dr. Voss stood up from her chair and walked to the window overlooking New York City. In the distance, she could see the bright flashes of spacecraft launching from the orbital elevator that connected Earth to its space stations. "Actually," she said without turning around, "I gave those orders. About 6 months ago." The room fell silent. President Chen felt her heart skip a beat as she realized what Dr. Voss was saying. "You planned this?" the president asked. Dr. Voss finally turned around, and for the first time since the crisis began, she smiled a real smile. "Madam President, did you really think humans would develop faster than light travel without thinking about what we might find out there? We've been preparing for this conversation for 50 years. On the Cosmic Judgment, Admiral Zexathara watched the human ships approach with something close to amusement. His sensors counted exactly 312 human vessels, most of them smaller than his smallest escort ship. The largest human warship was barely a quarter the size of his cruisers. "Look at them," Commander Veltar said, his scales rippling with what passed for laughter among his species. "They're actually coming to fight us. With cargo ships and passenger liners." The human fleet arranged itself in a rough formation about 1 million kilometers from the alien armada. To experienced military eyes, their positioning looked amateurish and desperate. The humans seemed to have no real strategy beyond throwing everything they had at a vastly superior enemy. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." "Put it through," Zexathara ordered. Dr. Sarah Voss's face appeared on the main screen. She was sitting in what looked like the bridge of a small research vessel, surrounded by displays showing tactical information. Behind her, other humans worked at control stations with the calm efficiency of people who knew exactly what they were doing. "Admiral Zexathara," Dr. Voss said politely, "thank you for the demonstration on Mars. It was very educational. Now please allow me to return the favor." Something in her tone made the Admiral's crystalline body pulse with unease. The human scientist spoke like someone who held all the cards in a game, not someone facing overwhelming odds. "What are you talking about, primitive?" Zexathara demanded. "You're outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now and we might allow some of your species to survive." Dr. Voss smiled again. "You know, Admiral, humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We've gotten very good at it. But there's one thing we learned that I don't think you understand." "And what is that?" "Never underestimate an enemy who has nothing left to lose." The human fleet suddenly changed. Ships that had been moving with crude fusion drives suddenly accelerated to impossible speeds. The clumsy formation transformed into something precise and deadly, like a pack of wolves circling their prey. Energy readings spiked across the alien sensors as the human vessels revealed technologies that shouldn't have existed. "What are you seeing?" Zexathara demanded of his sensor officer. "Sir, I don't understand these readings. The human ships are showing energy signatures consistent with quantum manipulation drives. But that's impossible. That technology requires computational power beyond anything a primitive species should possess. Dr. Voss's voice echoed across the alien fleet's communication systems. You wanted to see what humanity learned from centuries of warfare? Allow me to demonstrate. The human ships attacked with the precision of a surgical strike. Weapons that the aliens had never seen before lanced out from the human fleet. Some fired beams that seemed to bend space itself, while others launched projectiles that phased in and out of normal reality. The alien formation, which had seemed so overwhelming just minutes before, suddenly found itself fighting an enemy that moved like nothing they had ever encountered. Human ships flickered in and out of existence, appearing behind alien vessels to strike at their weakest points before vanishing. Again, Admiral Zexthera watched in growing horror as his mighty fleet was systematically dismantled by an enemy he had dismissed as primitive. Within the first hour, 30 of his ships had been destroyed or disabled. The humans seemed to know exactly where to hit each alien vessel to cause maximum damage. How is this possible? Commander Veltar whispered, his scales now a pale yellow color that showed pure fear. They're learning, the sensor officer reported, his voice shaking. Sir, every time we fire at them, they adapt. Their ships are incorporating our weapon signatures and developing countermeasures in real time. On the main screen, Dr. Voss watched the battle with the calm expression of someone who had expected this outcome. Admiral, she said, you made one critical mistake in your evaluation of humanity. What mistake? Zexthara demanded, though he was no longer sure he wanted to hear the answer. You assumed we were primitives because our technology looked simple. But simple doesn't mean primitive. It means refined, perfected. Every piece of equipment on these ships has been tested in actual combat against other humans for decades. We don't build technology to impress people, Admiral. We build it to win wars. The alien admiral realized with growing dread that he was not fighting a desperate last stand by a primitive species. He was fighting a military machine that had been designed and built by a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of warfare. Sir, his communications officer called out urgently. Message from the Confederation High Command. They're demanding a full report on the engagement. Zexthera looked at the tactical display where over a third of his fleet was now gone. The remaining ships were falling back toward the edge of the system, pursued by human vessels that seemed to anticipate their every move. Send this message, he said slowly. The primitives are not primitive. Request immediate reinforcement. Full battle fleet. Dr. Voss's voice came through the speakers one more time. Admiral, we gave you a chance to leave peacefully. You chose violence instead. Now you get to see what happens when you pick a fight with a species that's been perfecting warfare since before your civilization discovered fire. The human fleet pressed their attack, and Admiral Zexthera began to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. The emergency session of the Galactic Confederation Council convened within hours of receiving Admiral Zexthera's desperate message. Representatives from 847 species gathered in the massive chamber that orbited the galactic core, their various forms of life creating a strange symphony of sounds, colors, and energy patterns. Empress Kylothera of the Vorthak Empire stood at the center of the assembly, her crystalline form towering above the other delegates. Unlike her subordinate Admiral Zexthera, she was ancient by the standards of most species, having lived for over 3,000 years. She had seen the rise and fall of dozens of civilizations. The humans have destroyed 123 of our ships, she announced, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. A force we believe to be primitive has revealed capabilities that match or exceed our own. A representative of the Moldrani collective, a species that looked like living plants with golden leaves swayed with agitation. This is impossible. Our intelligence clearly showed that humans were centuries away from developing advanced technology. Our intelligence was wrong, Empress Kylothera replied coldly. The question now is how we respond to this threat. Ambassador Thex of the Silicon Courts raised one of his metallic arms. His species had evolved from artificial intelligences created by a long-dead organic race, and they prided themselves on logical thinking. Perhaps we should attempt diplomatic contact. The humans may be willing to negotiate now that they have demonstrated their strength. Negotiate. The voice came from General Korath, a member of the predator castes whose species resembled massive armored insects. They destroyed our ships without warning. They are clearly an aggressive species that cannot be reasoned with. Empress Kyle'thera accessed the battle reports that Admiral Zexathara had transmitted before retreating beyond the orbit of Jupiter. The tactical analysis made disturbing reading. The human ships had not just won the battle, they had learned from it. Every weapon the Confederation had used, every tactical maneuver had been studied and countered by the human fleet. The reports indicate that human technology adapts in real time, she told the assembly. They reverse engineer our weapon systems during combat and incorporate improvements into their own ships within minutes. A murmur of unease rippled through the chamber. Most species in the Confederation had achieved their current technology levels thousands of years ago and had seen little need for rapid innovation. The idea of technology that could evolve during battle was both fascinating and terrifying. "What are you proposing?" asked Ambassador Thex. Empress Kyle'thera's form pulsed with the deep blue light that indicated serious thought among her people. "We mobilize the Great Armada. Every ship, every weapon, every species in the Confederation. We end this threat before it can spread." The vote was closer than expected, but the decision was made. The Great Armada would gather at the edge of human space. 10,000 ships from across the galaxy would converge on the Sol system. It would be the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. What none of the Confederation leaders realized was that humans had been listening to their emergency session. Dr. Sarah Voss sat in her command, chair aboard the research vessel New Horizon, watching the alien discussions through intercepted quantum communications. The human fleet had captured several alien ships during the first battle, and their advanced computers had been quickly analyzed and turned against their creators. "They're mobilizing everything they have," reported Captain Martinez. The military liaison who had been assigned to Dr. Voss's operation, 10,000 ships representing hundreds of different species and technology types. Dr. Voss nodded calmly, as if she had expected this response. Around her, the command center of the New Horizon buzzed with activity. Dozens of technicians worked at stations that would have looked like magic to humans from just a few years ago, but which were now standard equipment on every ship in the human fleet. "How long until they arrive?" Dr. Voss asked. "Approximately 6 months based on their fastest ships," Captain Martinez replied. "The bulk of their fleet will need longer to reach us." "Perfect," Dr. Voss said with a smile that had become familiar to her crew. "That gives us time to prepare a proper welcome." She activated a communication link to Earth where President Chen was coordinating with world leaders about the approaching threat. The president appeared on Dr. Voss's screen looking tired but determined. "Sarah, we're getting reports that the aliens are sending everything they have. 10,000 ships. How are we going to fight against odds like that?" Dr. Voss leaned back in her chair. "Madam President, do you remember what I told you about human preparations? We've been working on more than just better weapons." "What do you mean?" "Project Genesis. It's time to activate it." President Chen had heard the name before, but the details of Project Genesis were classified at levels far above even her clearance. "What exactly is Project Genesis?" "The reason we've been so confident, Madam President. For the past 50 years, while the aliens were watching Earth, we were building something in the outer solar system, something they never noticed because they were focusing on the wrong things." The screen changed to show a view of the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. What President Chen saw made her catch her breath. The space between the planets was filled with structures that looked like massive factories. Automated shipyards stretched for millions of kilometers, connected by streams of cargo vessels carrying raw materials and finished components. "My God," President Chen whispered. "How long has this been here?" "We started construction the day after we achieved faster-than-light travel," Dr. Voss explained. Every cargo ship that went to the outer system carried construction materials. Every mining operation in the asteroid belt was actually building factories. Every scientific expedition was really establishing manufacturing centers. Captain Martinez brought up additional displays, showing the true scope of Project Genesis. Automated factories on dozens of asteroids were producing spacecraft at an incredible rate. Von Neumann constructors' self-replicating machines that could build copies of themselves were turning raw asteroids into fleets of warships. "The aliens think they're facing a few hundred human ships," Dr. Voss continued. "But that was just our scouting force. By the time their Great Armada arrives, we'll have over 300,000 ships waiting for them." President Chen stared at the displays in amazement. "You've been building a secret fleet for 50 years? Not just a fleet, Madam President. An entire industrial civilization. Every human colony, every research station, every mining operation has been part of this project. We've been preparing for the day when we would meet other intelligent species, and we decided that when that day came, we wanted to be ready for any possibility. The President sat back in her chair, trying to process what she was seeing. Why wasn't I told about this? Dr. Voss's expression grew serious. Because we needed the reactions to be genuine. When the aliens analyzed human leadership, they had to see real fear, real desperation. If you had known about Genesis, you might have acted differently, and they would have suspected we were hiding something. On the edge of the solar system, Admiral Zexithara was setting up a monitoring station to watch for the arrival of the Great Armada. His remaining ships had taken position near Pluto, far enough from the human fleet to avoid another engagement, but close enough to observe their activities. What he saw confused him. The human ships had not pursued his fleeing vessels. Instead, they had returned to the inner system and seemed to be conducting normal operations. Mining ships moved between asteroids, cargo vessels traveled between Earth and Mars, and scientific expeditions continued their work as if nothing had happened. Perhaps we overestimated them, Commander Veltar suggested. Maybe they used up most of their advanced technology in that one battle. Admiral Zexithara was not so sure. His sensors were detecting strange energy signatures throughout the outer solar system, but whenever he tried to focus on them, the readings disappeared. It was as if the humans were hiding something massive in the asteroid belt. Sir, his sensor officer called out urgently, I'm detecting new ship signatures. Lots of them. The Admiral turned to his tactical display and felt his crystalline heart stop beating. Emerging from the asteroid belt were not dozens of human ships, but thousands. Each vessel was larger and more advanced than anything they had seen during the first battle. As he watched, more ships continued to appear, until the space around the asteroids was filled with human warships. How many? He whispered. Sensors are having difficulty getting an accurate count, sir. The number keeps increasing. Current estimate is over 50,000 ships and still rising. Admiral Zexithara realized that he had made another terrible mistake. The humans hadn't been caught off guard by the alien ultimatum. They had been waiting for it. Everything they had shown so far had been a carefully planned demonstration, designed to lure the Confederation into committing their entire fleet to a battle they could not win. The species that the galaxy had dismissed as primitive had spent 50 years preparing for war against enemies they had never met, and now those enemies were coming, walking straight into the trap that humanity had built for them. Admiral Zexithara sent another message to the Confederation High. The Great Armada emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system like a mechanical sunrise. 10,000 ships from hundreds of different species created a formation that stretched across millions of kilometers of space. Each vessel represented centuries of technological development and military tradition from the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Empress Kylthera stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Dominion, a massive dreadnought that was 20 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to sterilize an entire planet. Around her, the greatest military minds from across the Confederation worked at control stations, coordinating the largest fleet ever assembled. Status report, the Empress commanded. Fleet Admiral Gorthak, a massive creature covered in chitinous armor, gestured toward the tactical display. All 10,000 ships have arrived successfully. Battle formations are complete. We have overwhelming superiority in every category: firepower, armor, numbers, and technology. The Empress studied the display showing the human solar system. Long-range sensors detected significant activity around Earth and Mars, but the readings were confusing. Instead of the few hundred ships they had expected to face, the sensors were showing thousands of human vessels. Explain these readings, she ordered her sensor technician. The technician, a member of the crystalline seer caste known for their analytical abilities, manipulated his controls with visible confusion. Empress, I'm detecting approximately 300,000 human ships throughout the system. But that can't be correct. The readings must be false. 300,000? Fleet Admiral Gorthak's mandibles clicked together in disbelief. Impossible. No species can build that many warships in just 6 months. But as the Confederation fleet moved deeper into the system, the truth became undeniable. The space around every planet, asteroid, and moon was filled with human vessels. What they had assumed was a desperate last stand by a primitive species was actually a carefully prepared defense by a civilization that had been building for war since before first contact. Dr. Sarah Voss watched the alien fleet approach from her position aboard the command ship Terra's Wrath, a massive vessel that had been constructed in secret over the past several months. Around her, the human fleet maintained perfect formation, each ship connected to a network of artificial intelligences that allowed them to function as a single, impossibly complex organism. "They're beautiful ships," Captain Martinez commented, studying the alien formations. "Each one represents a different approach to space warfare, different philosophies of design and combat." Dr. Voss nodded. "That's exactly their weakness. Look at their formation. They're trying to coordinate hundreds of different technologies and tactical doctrines. Each species fights differently, thinks differently. They're not one fleet. They're hundreds of small fleets trying to work together." The human fleet, by contrast, moved with perfect unity. Every ship had been built to the same specifications, using the same technology, following the same tactical principles. Where the alien armada was a collection of different forces, the human fleet was a single weapon wielded by a single mind. "Open a communication channel," Dr. Voss ordered. "Let's see if we can end this before it starts." Empress Kylothera received the human transmission with surprise. She had expected desperate pleas for mercy or futile threats from an outnumbered enemy. Instead, she heard the calm, confident voice of the human scientist who had defeated Admiral Zexuthara. "Empress Kylothera," Dr. Voss said politely, "welcome to our solar system. Before we begin what promises to be a very destructive battle, I wanted to offer you one last chance to avoid unnecessary casualties." "You dare to threaten us?" the Empress demanded. "We have 10,000 ships representing the combined might of galactic civilization. And we have 300,000 ships representing 50 years of human preparation," Dr. Voss replied calmly. "But numbers aren't everything. Quality matters more than quantity. Coordination matters more than individual strength. And understanding your enemy matters most of all." The Empress felt a chill run through her crystalline form. Something in the human's tone suggested that this was not bravado or desperation. The primitive species they had come to exterminate was speaking like a predator that had cornered its prey. "You're bluffing," Fleet Admiral Gorthak interrupted. "No species could build 300,000 warships in 6 months." Dr. Voss smiled. "You're right, Admiral. We didn't build them in 6 months. We built them over 50 years. While your intelligence services were watching Earth and assuming we were primitive because our cities didn't look advanced enough for your tastes, the human transmission switched to a tactical display that made every alien commander catch their breath. The entire solar system was revealed as a massive fortress, with defensive installations on every asteroid, weapons platforms hidden throughout the asteroid belt, and manufacturing centers that stretched from Mercury to Pluto. "This is what humans do," Dr. Voss continued. "When we know we're going to face a problem, we prepare for it. When we know we're going to fight a war, we get ready to win it. Your species achieved peace and prosperity thousands of years ago. My species spent that same time learning how to fight." Empress Kylothera studied the tactical data with growing horror. The humans had not stumbled onto faster-than-light travel by accident. They had developed it as part of a carefully planned expansion into space, with the specific goal of preparing for contact with hostile alien species. "How did you know we would be hostile?" she asked. "Because that's what civilizations do when they encounter something they don't understand," Dr. Voss replied. "They either try to control it or destroy it. We hoped for the best, but we prepared for the worst." Fleet Admiral Gorthak activated his weapon systems. "Enough talk! All ships, engage the enemy!" The Battle of Sol began with the alien fleet firing every weapon they possessed. Antimatter torpedoes, plasma cannons, gravity weapons, and technologies that warped space itself lanced out toward the human fleet. It was enough firepower to destroy a dozen solar systems, but the human ships didn't try to avoid the attack. Instead, they simply absorbed it. Energy shields that shouldn't have been possible deflected the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. When some shots did penetrate, the damaged ships repaired themselves within minutes using nanotechnology that rebuilt their hulls at the molecular level. "Impossible," Gorthak roared. "Those energy readings are off the scale. How are they powering those shields?" Dr. Voss answered over the open channel. "We learned something interesting when we reverse-engineered your first probe, Admiral. Your technology is very advanced, but it's also very old. You've been using the same basic principles for thousands of years. We've had 6 months to improve on them. The human fleet counterattacked with weapons the aliens had never seen. Ships fired beams that ignored energy shields entirely, passing through them as if they weren't there to strike at the hulls beneath. Other vessels launched projectiles that seemed to teleport past defensive systems, appearing inside enemy ships without crossing the space between. But the most terrifying aspect of the human attack was its coordination. Where the alien fleet fought as thousands of individual ships, the human vessels moved like the fingers of a single hand. When one ship was damaged, others moved to protect it. When an enemy showed weakness, dozens of human vessels focused their fire on that exact spot. Within the first hour, the Confederation had lost over 1,000 ships. The Great Armada, which had seemed so overwhelming just minutes before, was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that anticipated every move, countered every strategy, and learned from every exchange. They're not just fighting us, Empress Kylthera realized with growing dread. They're studying us. Every weapon we use, every tactic we employ, they're analyzing it and developing countermeasures. She was right. The human fleet was connected to a network of artificial intelligences that processed battle data faster than any organic mind could comprehend. Every alien weapon that fired was immediately analyzed, its principles understood, and its weaknesses identified. Within minutes, the human ships would develop new defenses specifically designed to counter that particular threat. Empress, her communications officer called out urgently. We're receiving surrender requests from over 200 ships. The Muldrani Collective is requesting permission to withdraw from the battle. Kylthera looked at the tactical display, where green dots representing Confederation ships were winking out one by one. The humans were not just winning. They were demonstrating that the galaxy's greatest military force was helpless against them. Dr. Voss's voice came through the speakers again, still calm despite the massive battle raging around her. Empress, your fleet is brave and your ships are beautiful, but this battle was over before it began. We're not fighting to conquer you or destroy you. We're fighting to show you that we're not victims to be bullied. What do you want? Kylthera asked, though she already knew the answer. The same thing we wanted from the beginning. To be left alone to develop as we choose, to explore the galaxy on our own terms, to meet other species as equals, not subjects. The Empress realized that she faced an impossible choice. She could continue the battle and watch her entire fleet be destroyed. Or she could retreat and admit that the greatest military force in galactic history, 1 year after the first alien ultimatum, the Galactic Confederation Council Chamber, looked very different. The once proud assembly of 847 species had been reduced to fewer than 200. Many civilizations had simply stopped sending representatives after news of the Battle of Sol spread throughout the galaxy. Others had formally withdrawn from the Confederation to seek separate peace agreements with humanity. Ambassador Sarah Voss walked through the massive chamber with calm confidence, her simple human clothing a stark contrast to the elaborate forms and technologies of the alien delegates. Behind her came a small group of human advisors, representing the various military and scientific branches of what was now called the Terran Federation. The humans had changed in the year since first contact. No longer were they a single-world species struggling to reach the stars. The Terran Federation now controlled 53 star systems, with new colonies established every month. Human ships had been spotted throughout the galaxy, exploring, trading, and sometimes fighting when other species made the mistake of showing aggression. Empress Kylthera still sat at the center of the assembly, but her crystalline form was dimmer than it had been before the war. The defeat at Sol had broken something fundamental in the Confederation's power structure. Species that had been loyal for thousands of years were now questioning whether the old order could protect them from humanity. Ambassador Voss, the Empress said, as the human delegation took their seats. Thank you for accepting our invitation to discuss terms. Dr. Voss smiled politely. Of course, Empress. Though I should point out that we're here to discuss your surrender, not negotiate as equals. A ripple of shock went through the chamber. Several alien delegates made sounds of outrage, but they were quickly silenced by others who remembered what had happened to species that had continued to oppose humanity after the Battle of Sol. The Krex Empire had been the first to test human resolve. 3 months after Sol, they had attacked a human colony with a fleet of 500 ships. The human response had been swift and absolute. The entire Krex military was destroyed within a week and their homeworld was placed under human occupation. The Krex Emperor had been forced to publicly apologize and pay massive reparations. Since then, no species had been willing to engage human forces directly. "What are your terms?" Empress Kylthera asked quietly. Dr. Voss activated a holographic display that showed the current state of the galaxy. Human-controlled systems were marked in blue, forming an expanding network of colonies and trade routes. Confederation territory was marked in red, showing a shrinking collection of worlds that seemed increasingly isolated. "First," Dr. Voss said, "the Galactic Confederation will formally recognize the Terran Federation as an independent and sovereign entity. All claims to human territory, including Earth and our original solar system, will be permanently abandoned." There was no discussion. The Empress simply nodded. "Second, all species currently under Confederation control will be given the option to join the Terran Federation instead. Those who choose to remain with the Confederation will be allowed to do so, but they cannot be forced to stay." This caused more concern among the alien delegates. Ambassador Thex of the Silicon Court spoke up. "Many of our member species are already expressing interest in human protection. If this continues, the Confederation will cease to exist." Dr. Voss shrugged. "That's not our problem. We didn't start this war, and we didn't force you to threaten peaceful species with extinction. If your member worlds prefer our leadership to yours, perhaps you should ask why." The truth was that humanity had proven to be surprisingly effective at governing diverse populations. Where the Confederation had maintained order through threats and military occupation, humans offered genuine partnership to species that joined them willingly. Alien civilizations that became part of the Terran Federation kept their own cultures, their own governments, and their own territories. They simply gained access to human technology and protection from human military forces. Third, Dr. Voss continued, the Confederation will pay reparations for the unprovoked attack on Mars Colony Beta. 2,000 human lives were lost in that attack, and their families deserve compensation. How much? The Empress asked. The economic output of 12 Confederation worlds for the next 50 years. Several delegates gasped at the size of the demand, but Empress Kylthera knew she had no choice but to agree. Human economic power had grown even faster than their military might. Human industrial capabilities could produce goods and services faster and cheaper than any Confederation world, making human trade partnerships extremely attractive to alien consumers. Fourth, any species that wishes to maintain diplomatic relations with humanity must formally apologize for supporting the attempted genocide of our people. This apology must be broadcast to their entire population. This was perhaps the most painful demand. For proud species that had dominated the galaxy for millennia, publicly admitting their mistake in front of their own people was a humiliation worse than military defeat. And finally, Dr. Voss said, her voice growing harder, any species that attacks human civilians or military forces in the future will face immediate and total retaliation. Not proportional response, not limited military action, complete destruction of their military capabilities and occupation of their homeworld. The chamber fell silent. Everyone present understood what they were hearing. Humanity was not offering terms for peace, they were dictating the conditions of surrender. The species that the galaxy had tried to exterminate was now powerful enough to exterminate any of them in return. These terms are acceptable, Empress Kylthera said quietly. Dr. Voss nodded. Excellent. There's one more thing we need to discuss. She activated another display, this one showing a detailed analysis of Confederation technology and military capabilities. The data was frighteningly accurate, revealing that humans understood alien technology better than the aliens themselves. Over the past year, we've been studying your civilizations very carefully, Dr. Voss explained. We've learned some interesting things. For example, most of your species achieved advanced technology through slow, peaceful development over thousands of years. You've had very little experience with rapid innovation or military conflict. She paused to look around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from dozens of different species. Humanity is different. We spent thousands of years fighting each other, competing, struggling to survive. Every generation of humans had to innovate or die. Every war taught us new ways to build better weapons, develop better strategies, create better technologies. What you see as primitive chaos, we see as evolution in action. Ambassador Thex spoke up. What is your point, Ambassador? My point is that this war was inevitable the moment you decided to judge us by your own standards. You saw a species that looked chaotic and dangerous, and you assumed that meant we were unfit to join galactic civilization. But chaos and danger are exactly what made us strong enough to survive contact with you. Dr. Voss stood up from her seat, looking out over the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. The galaxy has been peaceful for so long that you forgot what happens when peace meets war. You created stable, comfortable societies that had no experience with conflict or rapid change. Then you encountered a species that had never known peace, never stopped changing, never stopped fighting to improve themselves. She smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. You declared war on us to prevent humanity from becoming a threat to your peaceful galaxy. Congratulations, you succeeded in creating exactly the threat you feared. But unlike you, we're not interested in ruling others through fear. We're interested in cooperation, trade, and mutual benefit. The ambassador walked toward the exit of the chamber, her small human entourage following behind. Join us willingly, and you'll find humans to be generous partners and loyal friends. Oppose us, and you'll discover why a species that fought itself for millennia has no trouble fighting anyone else. The choice, as always, is yours. As the human delegation left the chamber, Empress Kylthara looked around at the remaining delegates. In just 1 year, everything had changed. The species they had dismissed as primitive barbarians had become the dominant force in the galaxy. But perhaps most disturbing of all was the realization that humanity was still growing, still expanding, still learning. The war that was supposed to end the human threat had instead taught them everything they needed to know about galactic civilization. Now they were using that knowledge to build something new, something that combined human innovation with alien wisdom, human determination with alien knowledge. The galaxy had declared war to stop humanity from becoming a threat. Instead, they had accidentally created something far more dangerous, a species that combined the strategic thinking of natural predators with the technological capabilities of advanced civilization. As news of the Confederation's surrender spread throughout the galaxy, millions of alien worlds faced a simple choice: join the growing Terran Federation as equals, or watch from the sidelines as humanity reshaped the galaxy according to their own vision. Most chose to join. After all, if you couldn't beat the most successful predators in the galaxy,